Hello, welcome to Season 7 of The Horrific Podcast. We're two friends who live in different places but share a love for scary movies. In each episode, we both watch the same movie on our own and then record a conversation about what we liked, what we hated, if we were scared, and maybe even some larger truths about why people watch horror movies in the first place. This season, our theme is the current state of horror. We'll be watching 20 or so movies from the last couple of years, reviewing them like normal, and then also talking about some of the larger trends we see. If you want to see the list and follow along, check out our website at thehorrific.com. Thanks for joining us, and we hope you enjoy the episode. So, had you seen 47 Meters Down before?
I have not.
Had you heard of it?
I had not.
So I remember seeing previews for it in the theater and thinking, this doesn't look like it'll be great, but I could probably eat popcorn to it. And I think I stand by that statement.
So you had seen it? You saw it in theaters?
No, I just saw the preview.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, I never actually went to it. I don't even remember it being in theaters, but I just remember seeing ads for it at one point. And it was like, okay, yeah, I mean, it seems like kind of just a summer movie that'd be pretty easy to watch and not have a lot of thinking.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like it let me down with those expectations.
It did not. The only thing I think you may have been let down by is that you didn't get movie theater popcorn out of it.
Well, that is true. Yeah, it would have been a significantly better experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But what wouldn't?
I know, that's what I was actually fixed to say. Like, that could... Movie theater popcorn could get me to, like, anything, I think.
Dude, I've seen so many bad movies.
Yeah.
But I regret very few of them.
Yeah. We've saw a list of movies that were like so bad that we were just like, let's just go in and get popcorn and take it home and eat it. And we've done that.
Yeah. Yeah, when I worked at Garfield's, a lot of times I would get off like very shortly after the movie theater opened because it was right there in the mall.
Yeah. And
I would go across and just order a large popcorn, and then I would take that home and eat that for breakfast/lunch.
Oh, yeah. Living the dream.
Yeah. Living my best life. But anyway. I'll introduce it, and then you can give your fun facts, and then we will get into the soggy depths of 47 Meters Down. Do you see what I did there?
Well, we'll get into it.
All right. In 2017, Entertainment Studios Motion Pictures brought us 47 Meters Down, a survival horror film written and directed by Johannes Roberts. If that name sounds familiar, then you may have listened to our previous episode on The Strangers Pray at Night from a few years ago. 47 Meters Down stars Mandy Moore and Claire Holt as two sisters who travel to Mexico on vacation. While there, they meet two drinking buddies who convince them to go on a cage dive to see sharks in the ocean. They're only supposed to go down to a depth of 5 meters, but as I'm sure you wouldn't ever predict, the cable snaps and they end up trapped on the ocean floor at a depth of 52 meters. Just kidding. They were 47 meters down. Like the title. Anyway, and then they have to try and figure out how to get back to the surface before the air runs out. This movie was made on a budget of a little over $5 million and made over $62.5 million at the box office. It is currently available for streaming on Netflix.
It is.
So
I'm kind of bummed. I didn't realize that this was. I didn't realize that Johannes or whatever Roberts did Strangers Pray at Night.
Yeah. So I can't remember where, but I heard something about him in something else I was reading. It said something about acclaimed horror director Johannes Roberts, and I was like, oh, well, then what else has he done? And I looked through it, and that was really the only one that jumped out at me.
Mm-hmm. So. Well, so I have 2 facts about this movie.
Okay.
This movie was retitled to the name In the Deep.
How deep?
52 meters. No, so it was titled Into the Deep, and anyway, long story short, they switched it back to 47 meters. However, the movie leaked with the name Into the Deep, in August 2016, before this movie came out in 2017. The other fact I have for this movie is that 47 meters is 154.2 feet.
So yeah, I was kind of surprised because this movie made so much more than its budget, that there wasn't like more about it out there. But in the grand scheme of things, 62 million isn't really a lot for the box office. Like, that doesn't mean everyone saw it. And it also wasn't a movie that really left a lot to discuss, I guess. Like, to me, it was a very straightforward movie.
Yeah.
And it kind of took a little bit of a twist at the end that I liked. But beyond that, I mean, it was a PG-13 shark movie. Like, it wasn't really super bloody or gory. There wasn't really a lot of, like, edge-of-your-seat horror for the most of it. Like, it kind of felt more like a thriller for a lot of it than horror. Like, I didn't really feel, like, that sense of danger as much.
Yeah.
But based on the previews, I really thought it was going to be more about a big shark that was, like, terrorizing divers or something. But it actually ended up being more about the girls trying to survive. And the sharks were just kind of one element of that.
Yeah, I actually wrote down I felt like this is more like a survival film than horror, for sure.
Yeah.
Because, like, the sharks kind of would come in and kind of come out. And it was, it was definitely, like you were saying, when we initially were going to do the remake, not realizing it was a remake, and after you sent me the message saying, hey, actually, that's a remake, let's do the first one, we watched the preview, and I thought the same thing. I was like, wow, okay, well, actually, this seems pretty interesting, and I feel like I was definitely... It was like the Suicide Squad preview.
I haven't seen it.
Well, like, so the preview for the Suicide Squad movie is better than the actual movie itself. And I think if I'm remembering right, they basically, like, hired the company who did Suicide Squad to re-edit the film because they did so well in the preview of the movie. Yeah, but anyway.
Wait, they got the people who put together the preview to come back and help them edit the movie?
To my understanding, yeah.
Oh, that's kind of cool. Yeah. Yeah. But anyway, so this one generally not as creepy or horrorful as the trailer and advertising made it seem. To me, it opened a lot like a teen horror movie.
Yeah, I actually wrote down in 6 minutes we had crying and party dancing.
Yeah.
In 10 minutes we had a weird kiss scene.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the start of it.
Yeah, the start of my notes were like beginning dash drama, someone broke up with someone, then a stupid dance montage, really playing up these girls are friends and you should care about them.
Yeah.
But then that scene, because I mean, it was pretty obvious like what this movie was going to be, is like they're diving and there are sharks, right? So it was about 20 minutes in when they're in the water and the winch breaks and the cage falls to the ocean floor. And so I did like that it didn't take very long to get to that point. It was just long enough to like introduce the characters, establish that there was a relationship between the two of them, and then put them in danger.
Right. Yeah, it was... I will say with this movie, it definitely seemed like things went through it pretty fast. Up until like the very end, I think it was kind of dragging. Maybe I just kind of had enough at that point.
Yeah.
But yeah, it definitely. I mean, it's a shorter movie too, but it definitely seemed once it got to the action, I guess. It was relatively quick, and then it kept up where I wasn't like bored, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I thought that there were some cool directorial things too. Like that opening scene where it's the underwater shot looking up at someone in like the floating chair, and then she gets knocked out of the chair and her red drink spills, and then it's clearly meant to look like blood in the water. And then that imagery was kind of a recurring thing throughout the movie with the blood floating in the water. And I thought that was cool, even though it didn't actually like matter for the story very much ever, but just from like a setting up the shot and directorial type thing. And I also liked the like title sequence, like when it kind of faded in or showed that 47 meters down and had the director's name over it and everything. Like, to me, that felt very much like an old school horror title sequence.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was kind of optimistic there in the beginning, because it's like, okay, well, we're really setting it up here. But then it didn't. There were just some things that didn't really deliver. Like, there was that long explanation about how sharks can smell blood from like 2 miles away, and how they can hear your heartbeat from the next island over or whatever. But then that just like didn't really matter to the story.
Right, yeah.
Like, the sharks were such a minor part. And I get the whole being trapped underwater and maybe like the claustrophobia of it and the idea of not being able to breathe and everything. But I guess I wasn't paying as close of attention to that, because I kept waiting for like the big shark things to happen. Mm-hmm. And it just didn't really ever get there for most of the movie. Maybe I was expecting creature horror more than survival horror, but I felt like I spent the majority of the movie waiting for the scary part, and then it just kind of didn't come.
Yeah, there was like a couple. They had a couple jump scenes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely took a different direction too than what I thought. Like, for some reason, I thought when the girls were getting to the boat, and you see the boat's like kind of rusted and like in bad shape, I'm thinking like, okay, well, these guys are obviously like evil, or like they're gonna do something, to, I guess, mess with them. And then that wasn't the case at all. But I think it, I think it. I don't know if that was done purposely, but I think they did a lot of. They were saying a lot of things like in the girls' earpieces that they weren't wearing, that somehow should tie into the film, and some of them did. Like they would say like, don't breathe in too much, you'll hallucinate.
Right.
And then the blood thing, but it was just so. I guess it was just kind of random for me. It was just like.
Yeah, like they tried to inject some story elements occasionally, and some of them mattered and some of them didn't. Yeah. Which I think they kind of picked the wrong ones, but anyway.
Could you imagine like a horror film? Imagine them being down there and not having the dialogue. I think that would be pretty crazy. Like, just having to see like the crazy things that would happen. Kind of think of like there was a Robert Redford film where he's surviving at sea, and there's like little dialogue at it, and it was just like, it's really crazy. But
actually, you have stumbled right into my biggest section of notes.
Oh, okay.
And it's so, one thing that I noticed with this one was that since they were wearing masks, you couldn't really see their faces.
Yeah.
So all of the acting was just them like narrating everything that was happening and how scared they were.
Right.
And to me, it felt like the director was scared of silence. And
absolutely,
one of the scenes that I thought worked the best was when it was after the blonde girl had been bitten and kind of disappeared, and the other one was stuck under the cage. Mm-hmm. And there was just like the silence, but you knew that she was running out of oxygen and she was trying to get up and get out, and all you could do was just like watch what was happening. And that scene, to me, and it had like some music under it, to emphasize the feel of it, but I felt like that scene was one of the most effective in the movie, just because there wasn't that like talk to distract you.
Yeah. And
you had nothing except like this imagery of this like super dangerous situation. And that I thought worked better than most of the rest of it, because I really do feel like the dialogue and the way that they were just talking the whole time stepped on any sort of like mood or development of like that anxiety that you expect from a horror movie. And the scene that really got me on that was when they're first being lifted back up, and for whatever reason they have to yell out every meter that they go up.
Yeah.
And they do that from like 47 to like 10.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, we get it. Like, no, I totally get it. We don't need you to keep narrating.
Right.
Like, this is unnecessary, and I'm over it. And you're completely ruining any tension that's in this scene. And then when the rope started to break, I was glad. I felt like they had it coming at that point.
Yeah, it was definitely frustrating, like the dialogue, I guess, and there things just kind of happened throughout the film that like I just couldn't get over, and dialogue was kind of one, but like it was like errors in you know, like with this, like I was talking to each other, but like not, I don't know how they heard each other.
Well, like how did their radio communication down at that depth in between each other work, but not back to the boat? And
and so much so it got me thinking, where I was like, this is like, for me, someone watching the film, I almost find it like a little insulting, that kind of those, I don't know if I want to say mistakes, but it's like all it would have took is for them to put something black in, you know, their ears, like a little
right, yeah,
earplug or something, make it look like they, you know, could hear. I don't know.
Or just like commented like, oh yeah, we have, even though we have this rusty old terrible boat that everything's falling apart on, we somehow have these super advanced like radio scuba divers suits.
Yeah. And so it's like, so you had so many mistakes happening. It's like, and I was also thinking like, I'd be willing to bet that you can move a steel cage underwater, like enough to get a leg out. Like I would just be maybe not if your leg's the one that's stuck, but the other girl is just like rocket.
What cracked me up was when she just tossed that winch away like it was nothing, but then all of a sudden the cage was too heavy to lift.
Yeah.
Physics, bro.
Exactly. It's like, it's underwater, and I don't know what the ratio is, but I just feel like you should be able to move at least side to side, or like the current, maybe. I don't know. Yeah. But there was just things that happened like that where it just frustrated me so much where I almost couldn't even enjoy the film.
One part I really liked was how she didn't know anything at all about diving or how to like navigate or put it on or do anything. Yet when it came time to switch out the oxygen tank, it was just like, oh yeah, no problem.
Oh my God. I'm so glad you said that. I thought the exact same thing. I thought to myself, when Mandy Moore's character was doing it, so I thought that with the first girl, when she did. The second, when Mandy was doing it, I thought to myself, like, you can't move that steel cage, but you got the grip to unscrew that. Like, right. I don't even know if I can, but you have your fingers are all soggy, like it's just. And but then they knew exactly, you know, how to do that after like a quick like rundown of diving. It was just, there was just things like that was just like, and then I was also kind of frustrated because I was like, why like, I understand if you're a scientist, like studying stuff in the ocean or the ocean itself, doing something. I don't understand why that's entertaining. To get in a cage and have sharks come up to you. I don't know. I don't understand.
I had kind of the same thought, but then I looked into it, and it is a thing.
Yeah.
Like, it's a thing people pay, like, decent money to go do.
It's just like, if you know. I don't know. It was just kind of like, man, it's not like you're catching these fish or anything. Right. You're just kind of watching them.
Well, I'll tell you what I would spend some money to do. Stay at whatever resort it was they were at.
That was a nice resort.
That place was awesome.
Yeah.
Why would you have left that to go on that terrible old boat?
Mm-hmm.
But
what was that, in Mexico? Is that where they're at?
Yeah, unspecified Mexico.
Mm-hmm. Probably at some resort.
Yeah.
You know, those resorts are owned by the cartel. That's more horrific.
That's a movie I'd watch.
Yeah. I think it just, you know, with so if we touch base on, like, with Jaws, you know, when we watched Jaws, both thought it was a really, you know, it was a good film, but like I still struggle with that, the whole being terrified of sharks thing.
Mm-hmm.
I would be terrified of sharks, I'm sure, if we live close to an ocean.
Yeah.
But Oklahoma, we're pretty far away from them.
Yeah.
And it's just not anything that it kind of gets me. And I think I was like starting to get so frustrated. I was like thinking to myself, like, oh man, this again, it probably insult some people. I'm gonna say it. Like, it kind of. This is my opinion, not yours. It doesn't have to be. But it's like these guys are kind of just playing off of dumb people, putting out terrible movies, and they're making money. I mean, it's like, okay, this might be a good film, but this should be like a straight to DVD film. It maybe it was.
So what I would say is, think about this being a movie that you took your like 13 or 14-year-old to.
Okay.
Like, if you 10 years from now, you've got, or let's say 15 years from now, you've got a 13-year-old. And you want that 13-year-old to also be interested in horror movies. And you took him to this one. I mean, there's not a lot of swearing. There's not anything you really have to have a weird conversation about afterwards. They would probably be, being a kid, not having seen a bunch of movies, they would probably be like on edge for some of it, but not like too scared, not like traumatized,
Mm-hmm.
So I think just a good old family horror film.
Okay. Well, I'll say this though. Insidious?
Yeah.
PG-13.
No way.
Terrible.
Really?
Yeah, dude.
Oh. I had no idea.
Yeah, Insidious, The Ring, that would freak me out.
Yeah.
The Grudge, Insidious 2.
Yeah.
So it's like, you can have good horror films.
Okay, fair.
Better.
No, yeah, I stand corrected.
But I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
But it's I don't know, but hey, here's the thing. It's kind of insulting, but if that's how you make your money, or if that's your game, whatever, man. Get that cash.
Yeah. Well,
I'm fixing to be putting out some PG-13 horror movies.
Exactly. Seems like a quick way to make a dollar.
It kind of does. I'm just saying,
Yeah. What was your favorite scene in this movie?
So, I got this. The very end, when the credits started. No. No. So, here's the thing. I heard the comment, "You'll hallucinate."
Yes.
Be careful when, I don't know if it was Katie or whatever the other girl's name was, sister. I heard that. And I have written down in my notes, which I've sent you enough of my notes, I feel like you can trust me.
Yeah.
Where I wrote, I wonder if she's imagining this.
Mm-hmm. Like
after she got the oxygen. So if I were to have to pick a scene, I think the whole, like, okay, so this is okay, I'm having trouble with this, but I'll say this. The hallucinating of it, I found interesting.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like I kind of saw it coming. However, I found it interesting, and my thought was like, okay, well, that's not too bad. I was more impressed with, or I liked the idea more of like underwater ocean, like things that they could have shown down there. Anyway, the whole hallucinating thing, she sees the blood kind of flowing like water and realizes that she's down in the ocean. But my thought with that was that I think that the way this movie was created was this, whoever wrote it came up with the idea, like maybe heard, like, if it's true that if you have too much, you change your oxygen out and you can hallucinate, maybe had that idea and then built the movie around it, which is why you kind of have a kind of like weak ass beginning and middle until the end. But I would say the hallucinating.
So I did think that was a good twist, and just for setting context, there is a point where the sister has been bitten by the shark, and then the brunette is stuck under the cage, and then she like I don't know, puts oxygen into some kind of suit that lifts it enough that she can get out. And then she starts swimming, and then she hears her sister, and then goes and rescues her, and they're swimming up, and the sharks come after them, and they make it up just in time. And then she's on the boat and bleeding, but they both survived. And then she's like holding her hand up in front of her face, and she sees the blood from her cut hand. Then she holds her hand up and is seeing like the blood coming from the cut in her hand, which is like kind of a recurring thing in the movie. And then she realizes she's underwater, and then you find out she actually has been down there trapped under with her leg under the cage the whole time. None of the thing about her sister surviving or her surviving previously actually happened. And it doesn't really answer a bunch of stuff. Like, I'm not sure. I would assume that means she never got to the other oxygen tank, which means that she was like out of oxygen for a while and probably had some brain damage from that, as well as like the hallucinating or whatever. So it just kind of ended with like, it almost actually reminded me a little bit in feel of the ending of The Descent.
Yeah, I can totally see that. I can see it being similar to the end of Descent.
Because it was just that idea that she, had the idea that she'd gotten out, but really she hadn't.
Mm-hmm.
But with this one, it was funny to me because my thought was Mandy Moore's underwater hallucination is a better horror movie than the rest of this script's horror movie.
Yeah.
Because the part where they're starting to go up and they can hear the boat above, and like, okay, this is that last push. Like, this is their last chance to try and survive. Her sister's bleeding out. Like, that's going to attract the sharks. Like, they've got to get moving. And she pulls out the flare, and they can see the sharks kind of going around, but they're like, this is going to keep them away and everything. And then it goes out, and then she drops the other one. They're like, okay, well, they're down to the last flare. They've got to light this, and then they're going to go for it, and get to the top. And as soon as she hits that flare, and you see those sharks like right there in their faces, that scene got me. That caught my attention. That was the first one that really made me like, sit on the edge of the seat.
Yeah.
And then that whole sequence of her trying to get back up and getting her legs bitten and everything, like, that was intense. And gouging out that shark's eye, like,
yeah,
that was so
gnarly.
Intense. And then it was just over, and none of that even happened, and she's just there in the cage.
Yeah, I think I think there was definitely good thought into that as well, which is kind of made me led me to think that maybe this was designed around that idea for the film. Maybe, I don't know. I think the thing is like, I gotta know going into these, like when we watch a movie for the podcast, we've kind of talked about this, but it's different than when you just watch a movie to watch, like
with
you
popcorn.
Yeah. It's totally different because we got to talk about this and we got to find things to talk about. And sometimes when you're watching, you kind of like you start to kind of get frustrated because you're real. Like I realize, I don't pay attention to movies as well as I should normally. Like if I'm not doing this podcast on them, but it's almost kind of like a curse too, because it's like, maybe this was a good film if I was just watching it, had it on, kind of maybe editing a podcast or doing whatever, on the laptop. But when
like
I was
not having to pay super close attention to it.
Yeah, but when I was really having to sit down, and I don't know, it just from the beginning it kind of threw me off, like with crying and being broke up text thing through text, and then like it had promising from the opening, like you're saying, with the opening shot up, blood, you're supposed to look like blood in the water. It had promise, and then I just felt like, okay, well, we know where this is going, and if you want to watch a real survival horror, watch 127 hours or whatever that's called, where the guy cuts his damn arm off.
Yeah,
based on true story.
Yeah.
Also, I kind of would feel like I could beat up a shark.
Well, if Mandy Moore can, I'd hope.
I poke eyes out so fast, dude. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still a little disappointed that they didn't lean more into the shark thing. Yeah. I feel like that was like 80% of the advertising and like 5% of the movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the way that they kept showing the blood in the water, I thought was just a natural, and that's going to attract all the sharks type thing, you know? But it really... Like, there was a scene where the girl successfully hid behind a rock from a shark.
Yeah.
I don't think it's their eyesight that's letting them track you down. Like that. I mean, what was the point of that whole earlier scene where they talked about how the shark can hear your heartbeat from miles? Right. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It lacked a bit of consistency, I suppose.
Definitely did. It definitely did. But they made their money off of it.
Exactly. And they made another one.
They got free advertisement with our podcast.
Yeah.
What can you do?
Good on them. And that's it for today's episode. If you've listened this far, then thank you, and we hope you've enjoyed it. We're always looking for new ideas, so if you have any questions, comments, or movie suggestions, please send us an email at thehorrificpod@gmail.com. Or feel free to comment on or message our Facebook page. Just search for The Horrific Podcast. Thanks for listening.
I think we're alone now.